everybody. It's Kate Quinn from So Steady. Welcome to Sunday's Facebook Live with Kate Quinn. And I'm going to just make a couple of adjustments. We want to get our ruler foot kind of front and center. If you can do me a favor, let me know if you can see well, if you can hear well. I'll try to make some adjustments to the lighting and just make sure that everything is really good and visible. All right, we'll give a minute just for people to sign on. We don't have very many people signed on yet, so I'll just chit-chat for a second. I know it takes a minute for people to find us. So hopefully everybody is having a good week, and today we're going to do Tile Titans block number 4. So we've done 3 of them already, and we are going to be doing the next one in the series. I'll kind of put my partial design up so that you can get an idea of where we're going. Hang on just a second. Okay. All right, this is where we're going. So obviously we're using some hearts today. This is the curly Q, and we're using 2 different sizes. This right here is the between the lines 1/2 inch purl, or you can use the Flower Power set, which has the same size in it. And then this design has a lot of straight line work that really are the bones and the framework. And then the last piece is there's kind of a center motif that these heart type of things are going to emanate from. So you can see I have quite a few numbers over here. We're all the way up to J as far as sequence. And I do kind of use this as my reference to get me going. So I'll go ahead and take this out of the way. Right from the beginning, we have some initial marking that we're doing. So I'm going to start with that. So let me get in here, get a little closer. You guys probably are noticing I have a new sewing machine. I'm excited about it. It's really fun. So this is the Janome CM17. And right now it is not using the stitch regulator, but it is set up to do that. So we can do some exploration of what does it sound like when you have it on and what does it sound like when you don't have it on. So this block from side to side is a 15.5 inch block. It's a square. So 15.5 this way, 15.5. This marking right here is marking that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I can cut a bigger allowance because all of my blocks have some excess, but when I design, I want to make sure that I'm taking that seam allowance into consideration for my design, because I never want to say, for example, put my heart right here in this corner, and then I'm cutting off a piece of my heart. So I don't want that. So just make sure to mark this in when you're doing your work. That'll help protect your seam allowance so that you know where you're going. Now, right here, this is the start of it. So I've got the inside allowance, and I'm putting a little rectangle in there. This line is kind of splitting my little rectangle, so it's equal 1/2 and 1/2. This is the crosshair square mark, and of course we have all 8 of them. But I want to show you a few additional marks that we're going to make, and I'll show you how I've made this and why I have some extra lines in there. Okay, so let me grab my SewBiz ruler, which I adore. Thank you, Donnell. So easy to see and really great for working, especially on these lighter colors. This box right here, this is 1 3/4 inch from here to this seam line right in there. Let's see if we can get you in a little closer so you can see better. Let me make an adjustment so you're getting a good view. Okay, so this is 1 3/4 inch square, right? That means that this, both of these, is 3.5. So when I mark it, if I put this on there, it's 1 3/4 inch deep from where I want this line measured from here, and 1 3/4 will be centered, and I can draw up to 3.5 right here, and then I would flip it and complete the square. And that's how I made this marking right here. So inside the seam allowance, it's actually 1.5 inch tall. And that works for this design. I've tested it. Does it have to be that? You can always play with these measurements, but the way that I'm telling you right now is going to make the design work the way I'm going to show you. Okay? So 1 3/4 inch tall from the outer boundary of the 15.5 inch block, and then you're centering it here, so right across the top, this is 3.5 inches. Oh, my machine is, I'm talking too much. It's like, come on, let's get sewing. All right, now I've made a couple of extra markings that I want to share with you. And the reason I'm going to go ahead and do them from the outset is it makes it easier for me to sew continuously without having any additional need to mark while I'm working on this design. I'm going to be making a 3/4 inch channel around this box, and there's going to be a 3/4 inch here, and it's going to cross over to the next section. So in order to have easy reference lines so that I can very quickly know where my connections are, I'm marking from this line 3/4 inch here. So what's going to happen is when I line up my ruler here, I'm going to sew up to this line, and I'm going to cross over to this dot over here, which is 3/4 inches away, and come down. So let's kind of scoot back out so you can see a little bit more. I think we're too tight. Okay, so that's how we're going to make sort of this outer framework of this as we go. Okay, so the way that we'll sew it, we're going to sew here like this, stop here and come down. Then we'll move the ruler over to 3/4 inch. So I'll explain the alignment there. Sew up to the dot, and then use the spacing gauge and come down again and then up. And that's how we're going to build the bones for this whole thing. All right, so we may need another mark. After we finish this, we're going to do some additional marking by extending these, but we'll do that next. Okay, so right here we have a lot of space to work, so let's make sure we can see what we're doing. I think I'll turn this a little bit so you can see the alignment better. Okay, gotta get that bobbin thread up, there we go. And I'll actually just set the needle in place right there. So let me show you what this is going to look like. Let's try to get in a little bit on top of the needle. Okay. Let's bring our camera just a little bit closer so that we can have a good view. All right, there we go. So I'm going to sew up this line, stop here, come across, and come down. That's what we're going to do, and we're going to do it all the way around. So in order to line this up right there, what's the first thing that I need to have? Well, handy dandy spacing gauge, right? Because it actually looks like we're a little bit too far away from where we want to be. All right, so I'm going to press some buttons so we can sew. Because I have the stitch regulation foot on, the computer is telling me, hey, you need to turn it on because you have the ASR foot on. So one thing that is important is, I'm going to show you right now, the ASR has speed, but if I have my speed all the way down to the bottom, that's why it's beeping at me. It's saying, hey, you can't go fast enough because you don't have any speed on your speed dial. Okay, so I'm looking inside the foot, trying to get right to my little dot there. And let's see, am I all the way there? Because I'm a little bit far away from the machine, it's hard to look back behind. I think we probably need like one more stitch to get on the line. There we go. Okay, and then again right here, we'll use our spacing gauge, and we're just going to start working our way around the design. So if I go faster, the machine's going to go faster as well. Okay, this is the inner box that we're doing, and I'll go ahead and put it on this side. I'm going to square it right up so I can go right down this line. We again should have that same 1/4 inch, so I think it's a little bit tight. Okay, and there we go. There's our 1/4 inch right there, and we'll come down. Okay. Now, when we're coming on this side, if I want to use the ruler itself, 2 of these spaces are going to give me the 3/4 inch measure. So I would be using this line right where my fingernail is. If you want to, you can always put a ruler sticker on there. I can move out just a little bit in case I want to have a bigger seam allowance, and I can just kind of scoot over. I'll tip this a little so you can see the alignment. I want 2 lines, 1, 2, and then I'll be at the perfect 3/4. So I'm just going to get that aligned right on the existing stitch mark, and then I'm going to sew back up to that reference line. Okay. And then I'll stop right there. Now, this is the inner box, and we have a design to put in here. And then this is going to be the echo. So we don't have the top of the echo, we really just have the bottom at this point. So let's go ahead and get it in. From that spot right there where we marked, we're coming over to this one. So our spacing gauge is again going to be used to get us right to that dot. When we align it, the very outside point right here is going right where I want my needle to go. Okay, so here we go. So machine's always waiting for me to move, then I've got to push. Once I start moving, it starts to register how fast I'm going. So I've got to actually move a bit in order for it to know that I'm going. From this side right here, I can lay this right on here. Notice that I'm right on those 2 lines, 1, 2, and just stitch right down outside of the boundary. Okay, and then I already have a reference line here, so I can literally just get my needle right in the reference line right there and double check it, and I'm right on the second line right there, coming right up to this line. Now I'm going to turn this because right now, with me being so far away from the machine, it would be very difficult for me to see. I can use this line back here on one of these reference lines, and another thing that does is really helps me keep everything squared up. So as I sew, the lines will be perpendicular to each other and parallel with each other, and I can just keep on going. Because I have this right here, I have to have this in the front because it won't go underneath there. But again, I can use the lines and help keep me squared up. So let's see if I am squared up. So with my marking and my ruler centered right on this line, I'm pretty much right at a 1/4 inch away from my stitch line. And I'll make sure that I am, just in case. All right, so here we go. Okay, and come back down, again using those lines right there to square us up and get us right outside the boundary. Okay, and then we'll scoot over just a little bit so we can get over to this line. And again, just so you can really see how we're aligning things, I'll rotate it a bit. Right at this point, I don't have enough room. This needs to scoot over so that I can line up my second reference line. So we're not quite in the right spot yet. So right there I'm aligned, and that's a perfect 1/4 inch, and I can even again use this line to help us square up the box and keep everything really neat. Trying to look inside my foot, getting right up to that reference line right there, and then we'll come right over to this one. So spacing gauge playing an important role. We could have this as maybe some piecing, but what's happening here is we're imposing shape on this framework, and I think it's going to make a really fun and pretty design. When we add the inside, that's when you really start to see it. Okay, and then here, put it on this side, line it right up, and again using the squaring line on the bottom. Okay, and then we'll just kind of scoot down and get the needle right over to this next line. Okay, then I can check Make sure that we're going the right 2 spaces right there. Line it right up, and I'm touching with my foot, and here we go. I can see that chalk line right there through the foot. Lining it up right here on this center line, and I will go ahead and check with my spacing gauge and just make sure that I'm aligned properly. I do sound a little hoarse. I don't know what the deal is. I feel like I've been hoarse for a month, right? It's been a while. So, you know what? This one is a tiny, tiny bit too far. I stitched a little bit too far. And how can I tell? Because this is a little bit wide. I'll show you. If I put my spacing gauge on there, he's just a little bit wider than I want. So rather than try and make a big, crazy adjustment that I think is really visible, I'm just going to gradually kind of get this back on a little bit. It's a little adjustment, but that's going to make the corner on that side still look a little better than if I tried to just jog over right there. A little gradual correction is going to make it look better than if we did an abrupt change. Can you have the ruler at the back side? Yes, and I'll show you that later. I can't do it right now because this will not go underneath there. So if I want to use this handle, then that's something I have to be aware of. I can use it, but not on the back side. I can take this off. If I was using my 12-inch arc, you'll see right there, no problem. I can definitely use the ruler behind there, so it's not an issue. So in fact, I'll transition. We'll just go down a little further and we'll just come over and I'll show it this way. I'm going to line up 2 spaces with my 12-inch arc and again use one of those straight reference lines to get us square. And now you'll see I can use it along the back, no issues at all. Getting up to my little chalk mark right there. And now we'll just move over to this position over here. So right here, I can't really hold right there, so I'm going to keep my hands kind of right here for a moment. And as I get a little further, then I can adjust. I can put my hand back there. And then adjust my hand position, make sure that I'm comfortable. I'm getting right into my little chalk mark. So you can see that having the marks is definitely going to make it a little bit easier for me instead of having to stop and adjust each mark every time. This is definitely making it easier. Here, because we can put the ruler underneath, we can just scoot over to the reference line and I'll line this up on the second line and then just sew straight up. Again, trying to use any kind of a straight line that goes this way on the ruler, aligning this way so I have 2 reference lines that help keep everything straight. Okay? So kind of looking in the foot, making sure as I get to that white line, I want to be perfectly right on it so that I can keep everybody square. So right here, right at a 1/4 inch, and this center line is aligned right there as well. So different rulers might make things a little easier to use in certain positions, right? And here, line it up, square it up with our 1/4 inch, and down we go. We'll scoot over because we're outside the boundary and just get on that second reference line and try to use at least 1 additional reference line. Okay. That's 2 spaces and we're coming right up to our little chalk dot right there. The needle's right where we need it to be and now we're almost done. So right now I kind of feel like it doesn't look like much at the moment. Oh, so right here, let me show you, I don't have my dot. So let's put it in. We want to make sure that we know that we're going to stop at 3/4. So I can just use this and make a quick little reference dot right there. So this is the roller ball. This does show up pretty well, but the chalk I think shows up really well on the camera. So I actually have both the chalk marker and this one. Whichever one I feel like is going to be the easiest to use in any situation, that's what I'm going to use. So as I line this up again, the outside edge of this is right where I want the needle to go, and then the foot is a 1/4 inch away from that. That's where that ruler is going to hit it right there. Okay? So again, get started with your stitch regulator. You've got to push a little to get going with it. It's waiting for you to move a little bit initially. And now I can just put this on that same reference mark and we'll get right down to the bottom. Okay? All right, so far so good. We have a really, really cute little framework. So let's come out just a little bit so you can see it. The block is pretty big, so I'll come out just a little bit so you can get a chance to see more of it. And then we'll adjust our camera for the next piece. Okay, I'm not worried right here about tying off because this is outside the block boundary by far. So we'll just cut some threads, make sure we don't have any loose threads hanging around. This Tile Titans is sort of designed as a quilt as you go. So I don't know if you can see, but there's kind of this unique hexagon shape right there. Now, the next reference line that we're going to need so that we know where to stop is we need to mark the 3/4 because these lines are going to be 3/4 and they cross, but they don't cross right there. They kind of cross right in the middle. So I'm going to just mark a few of these corners so that you can see how they cross over. And then what will happen is when I sew them, the needle will be the reference, right, that we'll be using where they cross over. That's where we're going to stop. Okay, so see right here, if I do 3/4 on this side, you'll see that they kind of cross in the middle, right? And I want to stop and start right at the intersection between those two, but it's kind of in the middle right here of the line, which is weird, but that's just the math of it. When I was first trying to align it, I couldn't make the corners match easily, and then I realized why, and that's part of why I decided to do this extra bit of marking so that I could easily figure out where my crossovers were, and that way when I'm sewing, I don't have to worry about it. I know where they are. So, okay, and that's going to make sure that this stays 3/4 and it goes right into this line, and these are 3/4 as well. So what do you think? Does that seem too complicated so far, what we've done? We marked some boxes on the outside, and we use those as the sewing reference, and right now we're basically just echoing the inside of this at 3/4. And we're going to stop right where they cross over each time. So I think this one needs a little bit more crossover right there. Okay, and now this is actually super, super easy to put this all in and get that inner box in there. So just a reminder, this is what it's going to look like. So what we're doing now is we've created this outer line. We sewed this part, and we came in and we sewed this part and up and over. So we did all of this outer boundary, and what we're doing now is this part right here, which will be just a simple echo. Okay, so yeah, Lorna, there was some more explanation at the beginning, so if you come in late, you're probably going to have to go back and watch the development and the measurement for this part. But all we're doing right now is we're just echoing because we're creating a channel here for us to put the little pearls in. Okay, so let's just start. We can start anywhere. We know where we're going to be. So the key here is we want to be 3/4. So we're using 2 spaces right there to get us there. Okay, and if my foot is already in position and I don't want to move, I can just sweep that thread underneath and pick up that bobbin. Before I set the needle, I'm going to realign the foot and just make sure that it's properly seated, which it is. So I'm right here on 2 reference lines, and now I can put my needle down. We're going to sew back around, so we'll tie it off when we get there. So as we sew right here, we're looking for that needle to go right to that intersection of those 2 lines. And right here, I can kind of check it as I go because I want the same 2 lines here. So I can just start sewing a little bit. I know I'm in the right spot. Okay, and then we'll just keep on going. Each time, double checking that you're on those reference lines, and I'll stop right there and adjust to get to the next direction. Okay, so right there, stop, and then we'll go around, get lined up. We're on the second reference line here, 1, 2, each time, and it's aligned right on the existing stitch marks. The lines that we've already sewn, that's what we're putting that reference against. Okay, so again, just keep going around, and we're lining that up each time. So this part actually I think is much faster than the outer part, even though the outer part isn't that complicated. This is really going to sew pretty fast. Okay, so once we've created the framework is what gives us the tile. This is what makes it look like a tile. And so I wanted to make sure that we took a little time to develop that. I think it really does make the shape, and then we'll start filling it in with some alternating designs. Could I put the ruler on this side if I wanted to? Yes, of course, I could, but this line is more accurate because that's sewn, right? This is marked. So in this case, typically I'm going to use the reference line that is already defined and not erasable or immutable. We don't want anything changeable in here, right? Okay, so again, using the stitch line that is already stitched is the best resource. Okay, so right there, stopping at that intersection and going around each time. So it's working out pretty well, so that tells me I did a good marking job because the lines seem pretty accurate. Everything seems to be just doing its thing right in place. Okay, and if you got to one where, let's say I lay this on here and the foot's not touching, well, I would kind of go back and see, do I need another stitch, or did I go too far? Where would I need to fudge in order to make everybody behave? So we're on the line, and as we come to this line, I'm going to stitch over it a few stitches, and I will do my tacking right there. And that way I can just make sure that the line is closed. Okay, so right here, just sewing slowly. Still going to sew, it's just slow, right? And that's okay, because I want small stitches. So pick this up, raise the foot, and then pull this out. Line it right back up where you left off, needle down and needle up. Okay, so that's about 30 minutes of work so far. And that was, of course, the designing was already done before we came to the sewing machine, and we had the plan of what we were going to do. So right now we have this very cool hexagon right here, and that's part of our center portion of the design. So we're going to start working on that next. We need to put the center part in because the heart that we have is going to come off of the circle. So at the beginning, I want to make a 3-inch circle and then a 3.5-inch circle, which will give a 1/4 inch space between the two circles. Now I can change those. That's just a random decision that I made, but I wanted that, and that's what I decided. Okay, so I'm using simple circle set number 2. I could use some different options. I'll show you one more option that you could use. We could also use the 3-inch circle, and we could put an echo guide. Then you would still line this up right on the center, but the foot will not be able to go all the way down. So you would sew a portion, and then you'd have to rotate this and sew a portion and rotate it. So I decided to use the 3.5 because then I can use all of the reference lines, and I can manipulate this if I want to. But you have choices. It depends on the tools that you already have. So if I didn't have this, but I have this, I still can do it if I have the echo guides. Okay? All right, so let's start with that. I just want to sew the smaller one first. No reason or rhyme. That's what it is. Make sure that your grips are down. When I sew a circle, I'm going to hold basically on the 4 corners. And the reason for that is if you wanted to, for example, simulate that the foot is here, then I would be pushing up the ruler. We'll kind of do it this way. If this is the foot, I would push the ruler towards the back that way to make sure that it's in contact with the foot. By the time we travel around the circle and the foot's over here, I have to push this way to the side. Then here, I have to pull the ruler towards me to keep this in connection with the foot. If I have fingers on the four corners, that definitely makes it a lot easier for me to move everybody at a moment's notice and get them to behave and keep the foot in contact. So anytime I have a ruler that is moving in a 360 movement, I try to hold four corners. It's easier to move and control that way. Let's line this up. This one is the 3-inch circle. It has 4 quadrants, so very easy to line up on the 8-point crosshair markings. Okay, each one of these lines is aligned. So pull this down and get your needle to pick up that bobbin thread right there. Okay, I'll get those threads at the back and just get them out of my way. They'll be stitched over a little bit, so I'm not worried about it. I'm going to bring the foot down first before I pull the ruler forward, and that way I can go ahead and align without this hitting my template. Okay, check your position and put your needle down, and let's sew. Okay, so you'll see I'll activate all 4 of those spaces. So notice here I've kind of got to move my fingers a little out of the way, okay, because we don't want them in the way right there. Okay, and I'm just going to come over to one of these quadrants right here, because that's where we're going to just jump over to the next circle. That lets me make sure this is tied off really well, and we can take this off. We are going to cut those threads, but this will just let me get it out of the way so I can do that more easily. Okay, put your tape back on always. That helps make sure you don't lose your key. I always want that to be findable, so I make sure that I do that. So here, needle up. Right here, we'll go ahead and we'll just cut this. We're going to have to cut these threads no matter what, so might as well just go ahead and cut them right now. That way there's no thread on the back. Got some weird bobbin there going on though. I'll have to check that before we do anything else. Okay. I had 2 threads that it pulled up with the bobbin, so I want to double check and make sure I don't have that now. Let's get all these loose threads out of here, clean up everything. Keep your workspace nice and neat. It definitely helps you. Okay, yeah, just 1 bobbin thread there. Perfect. I'll just pull these up and cut that. Let's put that 3.5-inch circle. I'm going to align it exactly the same way and stitch it exactly the same way that we just did. Let's see, what did I do with it? Oh, it's hiding. Here we go. All right, so same thing. Just line everybody up. I've got great reference lines on each position. Put this inside. This is a very narrow echo. It's not very wide. It's okay. We don't want a big wide echo. This will just add a little separation and a little bit of inner detail. We're going to use a mini Spinifex on the inside. So that way I think that the Spinifex detail gets a little accent, and it doesn't look like an afterthought. It kind of looks like it's got a frame. So you can see the foot is basically touching right at 1/4 inch as we sew around. Okay, so right here, I need to watch my fingers as we go around right there. And that's just something that, you know, is part of the process of having this awesome stitch regulator. Okay, so I'm going to stop right in the quadrant. That's right where these hearts are going to go. They're going to go kind of in this wide section, and right here on the diagonal, that's kind of where they'll meet in the middle. So that's part of the next development. So the Tile Titans, part of it is just to give you ideas for how you can make more complex designs by integrating tools that you may already have. You don't always have to use exactly what I'm using, but I tried to show you ways that you can use them, so you can maybe decide that you can replace it with this one that you have or that one that you have. Or maybe if you just like it so much, then maybe you'll decide that you do want it, and that's okay too, because that's great to have choices. All right, our next one is going to be the heart. So let me find that. Heart. He's hiding. I can't find him. Okay. So we'll do the heart next. I am Julie Chaplin. I am using a stitch regulator. This is the CM17 from Janome, and it has an integrated stitch regulator. And you'll see that when this red light is on, that is a sign that the stitch regulator is active. Okay. So with this machine, if I wanted to use a regular ruler foot, I can. I would just not, I can't leave this on. I would actually have to take this off and just put the regular ruler foot on if I didn't want the stitch regulator. All right. So let's talk about how we decided what could fit in here. So what I want is, I measured this space. So I'll take Donnell's ruler real quick and we'll just put this on there so you can see. This space right here is about 3.5 inches. I'll scoot it up a little bit, 3.5 based on the measurement from here to here. And obviously then a 4-inch heart can't fit in that space because it's too big. So I decided that the 3-inch would be perfect, and then we'll add whatever extra detail if we feel like there's too much space. Okay, so if we do one section, we're aligning the heart right at this crosshair line. Whenever we make a heart, we need the crosshair reference line because it goes right through here with the needle right here. The foot would be in the hook, and then down here there's another line right there. So having a straight line for a heart is really powerful because it helps make the heart look symmetrical with the tops and the bottoms even. Okay, so let's put the needle right in that position first. Okay, and we'll pick up our bobbin thread again. And we can anchor the needle all the way down at this point, right in that center position. So let me show you real quick. I have this awesome feature right here, which I've never even used yet, but it is a little flywheel, so I can control the needle position right there, right down exactly in that point where I want it to be. So it's exactly aligned right on the stitch line. Okay, so notice that the heart has the grips on both sides. So make sure that you have them on both sides because you're going to have to flip them over when you use this. Okay, so again, right here, aligning it, and you can see this is going to fit inside that hexagon that we've created. So here we go. We are going to end up back at that same position, so no problem with us being able to tie that off when we get down to the bottom. Okay, so I'm right in the hook, let the needle stop, and then we'll flip this over and line it back up. One important thing to note about using the hearts is because we are flipping the template over, it can be a little bit more tricky to align on one side than the other because the reference line will be on top of the ruler, not on the bottom. So go ahead and just take an extra second, look right here, make sure that this is a 1/4 inch. I usually use my pinky as my little foot reference, or you can use a stitching line disc. So let's go ahead and we'll sew this one. We'll come back down to the bottom. Okay, and this is going to start off our design. I'll turn it this way so you can see. So there's the heart. And this line splits the space between this section, right, and this section that we're working on. So this line is very important. This is the additional lines from the 8-point crosshair that we made right at the beginning. And this is really the first time that we're using these lines, but I did put them there because we are going to use them. So this heart is going to go in the center section of each quadrant, so 4 of the hearts. And it's possible that we can sort of travel around to put those in. I'll show you what I mean in just a second. The next tool that I want to use is my 10.5 inch curly Q. Both of the curly Qs that I plan to use today are from the set number 2. Okay, this is the 8.5 inch and the 10.5 inch. Can you see that? There, I'll hold it up there so you can see. And the reason I have 2 different sizes is this one needs a little bit longer leg in order to fit where I want it, and it's also just a little bit bigger. These are not exactly the same curly Q. If you look right here, See how this one, the 10 is bigger? So I want to fill up the space a little bit more, so I'm going to use that 10 on purpose. And then when I'm in the smaller space in the corners, then I'm going to use the 8 for that. Okay? All right. So this is where the random rule is coming into play. How many people remember that I love random rules a lot? Okay? So what I'm going to do is two things. This edge right here of this part is going to align touching this line, which means it'll sew a 1/4 inch away. Okay? I could make it go a 1/4 inch over if I wanted to, but the random rule is I'm going to make this side touch the outer boundary and this side, so it'll be in a 1/4 inch from this center line right there. And that's going to be my random positioning reference for both of these, which will keep this the exact size that it needs to be. Sorry, there's a little fluffy on there. I don't know if ceiling's falling on me or what. Oh, maybe it's styrofoam from the machine. It's fluffy. Get that off of there. Okay, so the random rule is this opening on the line and this opening on the line. Having both of these right on the reference, let me tip the camera just a little bit more so you can see a little bit better. Okay, so right on the center line, this is touching and this is touching. And if I do this side the same way, these should be very close to perfectly positioned next to each other with a little gap in between. Okay, so let's sew it. Right here, notice that I am inside the 1/4 inch. So when this sews, even though the stitch line is in this space, it's less than a 1/4. So I will not be stitching into the heart, and that was also important to me. But this line is going to kind of follow the heart a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and sew most of the way around right there. And then let me show you one cool thing that we're going to do. I got to tip this a little bit. I'm going to take this whole thing and go like this. And now I'm going to follow this a little bit, but I'm going to get back to the 1/4 inch and create a little bump. Make sure you're sewing on this side. Don't try to sew on this open side, right? This side is a 1/4 inch away from the space. Let's grab our spacing gauge so I can show you what I mean. Right there, I want to get back down to the bottom of the heart, and I'm going to use this same side and sew back down. I can't wait to show you how it looks. It looks awesome. What? Look at this. Doesn't that look cool? So it's not just a curlicue. Now it's like a cool little wing out there with some texture and some definition right there. So it doesn't look so flat now. It looks more three-dimensional because we have opened it and closed it. We have a really easy reference line here to define that shape. So let's go ahead and we'll put the other side in. All of this is going to emanate right here from the center. So this one is going this way. In order to do this side, flip it over, okay, and make sure that we have it aligned properly. We're pushing it down this way in order to get these two positions to touch how I want them. This little line and this little line touching the marked lines and not sewing into the heart. Go most of the way around that circle, try and stay right on it. Basically stopping when the foot is pretty much right in line with the tip of the ruler. Then, ready? Just scoot it to the other side so that the foot is touching on the inner part. Okay? And then in order to line it up, we're just going to tip it a little bit until we can get that 1/4 inch alignment right there and get right back down to where we left off. Okay? And here I'm going to just put a few extra tacking stitches and we can go ahead and cut that. Just to keep it clean, the circle looks really pretty and has perfectly been stitched with the ruler, so I'm not going to travel. I could travel on the outer edge right to there. I can even use the edge of a ruler if I want to do that, but it's probably just as easy at this point to go ahead and jump stitch. So I'm going to lift up my foot and my needle. Both of them are free. And then just hold this. We'll come right over here. And again, just like we did before, I can use my little flywheel and perfectly position my needle right in the intersection right there, get it all the way down. There will be a little stitch in between here that will need to be clipped, but I'm good with that. Let's go ahead and cut some of these, get these out of our way real quick. I don't like having strings everywhere, so I do, whenever I'm done with that space, then I can go ahead and clip those. So we're going to do at least one more that'll reinforce the heart appeal right here, but also show how these are going to connect to each other. So we have to do the heart first, okay, because the heart is the space anchor. Everything else is built off of that. Okay, so aligned right here, you're a 1/4 inch away, so you'll have this perfect little gap right there, and here we go. Needle will stop and we'll flip it over. Okay. And then I do want to check that back side. So with the camera in the way, it's very challenging to do that. So I'm going to try to use the line right here. I can see it right underneath the stable tape, and I'm right in line with that. That is important because that makes sure that we can actually close and get everybody lined up right at the same position on the bottom. So notice how I just kind of lifted my fingers up there to keep them out of the way. Let the needle stop right in the circle. And again, this we can cut. We're not crossing over, so we're not stitching through this on the back. If putting this next line, it might, but these are probably closer towards the circle, so I'm just going to risk it. It's just, if it does stitch through it, it's maybe like 2 stitches. I'll just clip it and it'll be fine. All right, we won't do all 4 quadrants, right? But this shows the interplay here between the 2 sections, which I definitely wanted to share that. Okay? All right, so again, we want this to curve out, and I chose that because this will go around the heart. So for example, if I tried to do it like this, this curves in, and it has much more of a chance of kind of going into the heart. I'll just put it on there. Could you make it do that? Of course, if you wanted to, but I don't want to. Actually, it looks like it'd be fine, right? There's a 1/4 inch right there. I think it'd probably be fine. So, you know, you could choose. You get to decide. Variation number 1. I'm doing it this way. You do whatever you want to do. Okay, random rule. Who knows what it is? It's a quiz, right? I'm testing you. I'm going to look at my notes and see. I love that. Bev, what little trick did you love? I missed it. Oh, you like that it's not double stitched? You like the jumping over? I do too. I do too. All right, well, let's go ahead and get this one sewn. To reiterate, this is just a rule that I made up. A random rule doesn't mean that it changes randomly. It means that I just made it up and I'm going to just use it each time to create consistency in my design. So right here, as I line this up on both of these little curlicues should be exactly the identical size or pretty close. You know, we don't need it robotically perfect, but we're just going to make it pretty close. Okay, so go all the way around the circle. Got to move my finger out of the way. I can see right there that the edge of the foot and the edge of the template are aligned. So I'll just push it over. That kind of helps position it a little bit to what I want, giving me the same curve on each side. And I'm going to line it right up with the spacing gauge, right to there. Okay. And you know what? I'll go ahead and sew the other side. That way I can just tack off one time rather than have a lot of extra stitching right in that spot. That just makes practical sense to me. So we'll line it up just like we did before, pretty easily, right on the reference line here and here. It's not going to cut into the heart. I got to shift my fingers. There's a little bit of lack of space there on that other side, right there. There was nothing to hold on to. So scoot it over and then we'll get it lined right back up with that spacing gauge, and then we'll be done with this part. Okay, get right into that section, and I'll do a little tacking right here. Just letting it do its own slow thing. If I don't move, oh, hang on, press the wrong button. Then it's just kind of waiting for me. So it'll stitch a little bit, but it just really stitches so slowly. And I think that's perfect for tacking off. All right, clip. I'll just clip this because I can. All of these are tacked in because they have extra tacking stitches. Okay, and get these extra threads out of here. So what do you think so far? Does that look kind of cool? I'm going to tip it this way so you can kind of see what the shape is like. That's what we have so far. I think it looks awesome. I love it. And you know, if you wanted more density, you could put another smaller heart in here, and then this could have like its own echo. You could echo the heart right there if you wanted to. There's enough room for a 1/4 inch echo. And the way that you can decide, this is a 3-inch heart, which means that this part right here is a 1.5 inch circle. So for example, if I put a 2-inch clamshell right here, which I'll show you real quick. I'm not going to do it, but I'll show you what you could do. This is the 2-inch. If I lay it right on there, it'll actually fit right on the existing, and it'll sew a 1/4 inch away. So I could use that to echo these. And then this one is probably about 1.5. So I would need a 1.5 to echo this, I think. You need something just a little bit bigger. Not quite, it might be 3/4. So you'd have to play around with echoing this. What you may be able to do is this set of curly cues actually has a really big curly cue. So you could actually put that on and use that to echo around these if you wanted to. So in order to put some definition here into the center, several of the templates that I use today are available in the Flower Power set. So they have a straight ruler, and they have a mini spinifex, and they have this 1/2 inch circle. So I decided in order to keep things simple, I'm actually going to use just the same spinifex that's in the Flower Power set. This is number 4, spinifex number 4, and you can see it has 2 sizes. All of the mini spinifex have a 1.5, which is mini, very small, and a 2.5, which is perfect to fit inside, you guessed it, a 3-inch circle, right? So it's going to fit in there with a 1/4 inch gap, and we'll use the center line. And basically, if we want, we can put all of them in. We can do all 8, or you can do 4, whatever you want to do. So we'll go ahead and set that up and sew that out. The needle will start right in the center. Let's make sure we're oriented the right way. Okay. Again, I can put this down, and I can use my needle alignment right there, get it down, and then we'll pick it up. Let's see, this is going to actually, I think, be very difficult to get the thread up. So let's do it this way. Let's get this up first. Down and up right there. We'll pick up the bobbin, and then I'll get the ruler in there. I think that'll be simpler. This one is just so small, there's not a lot of maneuvering room to get it where you want it. So now I can put the foot down, and now I can line it up. Okay, we want the needle down when we start, and try to get your threads underneath here as well if you can. Let's see if I can use a little grabber and get them. There we go. Because this has a little emery board on it, it's good for grabbing threads because they stick to it. All right, here's my 2 threads. And I think we'll go this way. So with the mini spinifex, there is a reference line right there, which is the bottom alignment. And then there's a line right here and also at the back. So I need to actually check all of those because I can have this lined up but not have the back properly positioned and having it kick out. So I want to take just an extra minute and make sure that I've got all my center lines aligned so that I can have a pretty design. So I'm going to do one thing is I'm actually going to change my stitch to 2 millimeters. Right now it was on 2.4, but this is such a tiny design that it needs to stitch a little faster. So by increasing my stitch per inch, making more stitches in the same amount of travel, then it's a little bit easier when you're doing something so tiny, tiny, tiny. All right, so we'll get lined up again, check all of our reference lines. Always checking right there. You kind of want to look right inside there and make sure everybody is aligned properly. Back to the center. Using this reference line, looking down, making sure. Always check maybe looking inside. It looks like I have like one more stitch right there to get to that center position. All right, keep checking, make sure we're good. I do think this is such a cute little star right here. It's like a little star flower. Okay, and we'll just keep going around. So we have several different minis that offer different looks, right? So if one doesn't appeal to you, maybe another one will. They have just some little different looks. I love the Spinifex number 11, and the Spinifex Mini 11 is no different. Some of them might appeal better in any particular design, but I've chosen this one simply because it's already in combination with several of the tools that I'm using for this. So that just makes it an easier opportunity if somebody wants to try this for themselves later, then they can get 3 of the tools in one go. I tried to use the hearts that are in that set as well for this, but because the hearts don't come down enough, then there's just not enough room to use that heart. It doesn't give the right look. So I will post a note with all of the tools that I'm using, and I'll actually put them all out at the end. I'll lay them all out. There's not a million of them. There's 2 curly cues, 2 circles, the straight edge, the Spinifex, and I think that's it, and the heart, and that's it. So I know that's a number of them. It's not like that's nothing, right? But there's not an infinity. There's a certain amount of them that are used. Okay, so we'll just keep going around and we'll get these in. There's only 8 of these, so hopefully not too boring. I think it's important with these little guys when they're so small, just for you to be able to see how you kind of get them done. And you have to move a little bit more because the space is so tiny for them. All right, this will be the last one. I think we're almost done. I can tell right here as I look that the line is going right through the center stitched Spinifex on this side. So that is another centering mark that I can use to say, yeah, things are looking good right there. So we'll get right into the center position right there. And we'll put a few tacking stitches just by letting it slowly stitch in place, and then I can cut that. I'm just going to scoot the ruler out so we can, oh, looks like I got some thread trapped under there. So I'll end up having to go pick that out later, but it's still going to be fine. There's just a few little threads that'll have to be kind of wiggled out from underneath. I'll show you up close, but I'll cut these and get these out of the way. So that's what happened when I was traveling around. I didn't make sure that I moved the threads out of the way, so they kind of got stitched over just a little bit. But it's not too difficult. I usually just will put the edge of the needle in there, right there, and I'm just going to pop that out and it'll be fine. Okay? All right. So let's talk about this design for a second and what is going to happen out here. Okay, so if you remember, we said that this space from the inside is 3.5, right? So from this space right here, if I align my 3.5 inch circle and my 3-inch circle, then it's going to fit right in here. So in each of those quadrants, you're going to have this half right here in this space, right? So if I have enough time, I'll do one of those at the end. But right now, I want to show you this part of the design right here with the pearls. That's going to be our next move. That does take a little bit more time, and it is a little bit more complicated. Now, when I did this, I'll be the first one to admit to you that I am not positive that I can make all of those circles fit just perfect how I want them to, right? This is riding in the middle of 3/4, which means that it's going to have to be halfway on and off of a line. I'll show you. Okay, this is the between the lines ruler. If this is the center line of the circle and this is 3/4, it's going to be in the middle of those reference lines like that, right? Right there. See how it's in the middle? In order to center this. So I have an option. I can just continuously use that and have one side be in the middle of these two lines for my reference, and just looking right here and making sure that the space is the same. Or I can actually mark this at 3/8, right? Because this is 3/4, so half of that is 3/8. You can decide what you think is easiest for you, right? The purpose of the between the line circle is so that you don't necessarily have to mark. But I think that in this case, it might be easier to have a little reference line to be able to line it right up in the center. So that will be something that you get to choose. I'm not choosing that for you, okay? And we already have this as a center line. So this is the diagonal of the 8-point crosshair. I think, this is my own personal choice, you can do it a different way, that if I start here and I go down and around the corner off the edge of the block, and then I'm going to come over here again and I will go that way. That leaves this section not done. But there is no way that I can calculate precisely how many can fit perfectly, so I'm not going to. I am making a random choice that starting at the center here, I'm going to go down and around the corner, and I already did it, and I can do it smoothly. And then I can match this one at the center and go this way, so this part will look intentional and even by doing it that way. Then, if I want to come back in, I can try and see how many can fit in there, and I can put a little something different right in the center right there if I can't make them fit nicely, and we'll show you that. Okay, so I guess I did not mark my line where I wanted to mark it. Too much talking, right? Oh, all right, let's go ahead and mark this, because I do think marking it will make it just that much easier. We want to mark it at 3/8. So I'm going to use the little 3/8 reference marks here, right there. And we want to go down and around the corner, so I'm going to mark it here as well at 3/8. Okay, try to get us right in the middle of those as much as possible. And I'm going to continue this line right here until these two touch so that I can make sure I can see where they connect. So this is what we're aiming for. We're going to start here and we're going to go down this way, and then we'll come back and we'll go down and we'll go this way. Okay? All right, so the center line of this is right through the middle, and there's a little circular reference line right there that I can use in order to make sure that everything is aligned, that one circle follows the next one. Hang on just a second, I'm going to have to plug in. I'm getting a low power warning, so you might hear no sound for about 5 seconds. Can you still hear me? Is everybody good? All right, let's go ahead and continue working this. I want to align this on the center line. I'm going to put my needle in there right at the center, and I'm going to sew to one side. So I could also align it like this, but when I tested it, I put the circle in the center. So I'll show you what it looks like. So right there, okay, if the center is in the circle, pretty much it puts this kind of right at the intersection to the point where I can go around the corner. So I'm going to put one circle touching there and emanating out, not right in the middle. Okay, so if you wanted to play with that and see if it could work a different way for you, then you can absolutely do that. Stitching line discs are your friend, and they would help you to do that. Let's bring you in just a little bit closer so you can see better. All right, give me 1 second. I'm going to adjust this camera so he'll do what I want. There we go. Let's see if I can get him to curve just a little bit more. How's that? Do you think you can see well with that? Thank you, Julie. I appreciate the thumbs up. Good. I hope this will be a little bit better. Right there. Okay, good. So I'm going to put my needle right there in the center and sew around. Okay. Now, let's put this in. There's not a lot of room to get the threads where I want them, so I'm actually going to open this and put it on, because I want those threads to stay underneath. I want to be able to get them where I want. When you put that tape back on, make sure it's up near the top right there, close to this edge. We don't care if this part is moving, but we don't want the part right next to the needle to be moving. So get my needle right in the center. Again, I can use my little finger wheel right there, and let's start. Lining this right up on the center, right there. I can check both sides now because I have a reference line. So when I want to make the between the lines purls, I'm going to go 1.5 times around. Having that little bit tighter stitch density now is making it easier to sew these. And I'm going to use that circle to line it up right back here and this line out in front. So we'll just keep on going. I like to use the figure 8 style. So this way we're going down. As I come to this next one, we'll go up. Okay, this way, opposite. Okay, right to the center, and just keep on going. Okay, and I'm going to go as far as I can right here to sort of get to the center of this intersection as best I can. It's not possible to have it be perfect just because that's just the math. I mean, these are a specific amount of size and they're only going to go a certain way. So when I come around here, I want to be as far down into this portion as I can be. So right now, let's see what we can do. Can I get lined up right in the center right there? I can, but I'm pretty far on the outside there. So I'm going to make myself come down maybe 2 more stitches on the existing circle so that I don't cut into that circle when I sew. I want to be at the furthest part down, even if it's past the center line. And now when I sew, this one should be able to go all the way around without tucking in to the circle above it. Okay, I don't want any crossover. So what I did is I just traveled a little bit around the circle so that I was at the bottom. And I'll show that a little bit more clearly when I go ahead and take this off. So we're right in the center, and we can just keep on going with these circles. That one went, I think, top to bottom, so we'll go the other way this time. Having that alternation, I admit, is actually very difficult for me to keep track of. I don't know, it's a attention span thing, but some people really love it. They like that you get that alternating double stitch. For me, I'm okay. I just want to get it sewn, period. So I'll just do one more just in case, just to get that out of there. And then here I'm just going to take the ruler off so that I can cut it, because it's so small right there. It's definitely into the working space. By taking that off, I'll have more room to cut those threads, and just it'll be a little bit easier. Okay. All right. Circles can be tricky. Circles like this, when you're doing pearls and you're trying to fit them into an exact space, it's difficult. So let me show you what it looks like. I'll bring this up a little closer. Let's cut this thread as well. This is stitched in because we went 1.5 times around. So this little circle, I can trim him and get those threads out of the way. When I do the other side, that's going to start right at that same spot. So there will be a slight amount of thread building up in that space. And that's okay. Nobody's going to care. It's nothing that you're going to be like, oh, that looks terrible. No, it doesn't. It looks fine. Okay, so let me show you what I mean. When I align these on the center line, see that this one's kind of centered there, but not perfectly. So I traveled around until I was at the lowest part of this circle here, as low as I could. And then I started going, and that gave me this connection right here between those two, and it looks pretty clean. It's a little bit tighter on this side. My line's probably not centered really well, but that's okay. So I would start here, and I would do the same thing, and I would go this way. So then this part of it is going to look very clean around this part of the hexagon and this section right there. And it looks great, I think. So should we do one more on this side coming this way, and that way you can kind of see what happens here in the middle? I think I will try that. What do you think based on time? It's 4:15. Do you guys want to see that one more time? Since there's a little bit of a lag in the broadcast, I'll go ahead and mark, and you guys let me know what you think, if you want to see that or if you're good. Okay. I'll mark this side so we can have the references though. 3/8 is what we said. Okay. And 3/8 again, right there. Okay, and we'll just, looks like it's a little bit too big. I'm actually going to adjust it. For some reason, it's a little bit big there. So I'm just going to make sure it's a better fit. Because it took up more than half. I didn't like that. So I'm going to shift it down just slightly so it'll actually mark in half. That looks a little bit better to me. Yeah, I'm definitely going to do the corners. It looks like a lot of people want to see it. I'll try and do it faster. I won't talk through it as much. I'm trying to get it, but then that way I can at least explain what happens right here in the center. So I'll try to go a little bit faster. I need my grips down. Get my needle right in the center. Right there. Okay. So my thread's kind of on the top. I'm going to just go ahead and go with it for the moment, and hopefully it'll be okay. We'll see. Line it up right on the center line. Try to make sure the back is also aligned. I can look right there in between and see the space, and that way I can sort of check that. Okay, right to the center, move it up, align, and we'll go the opposite direction. Okay, move it forward, checking the spacing each time, and go the opposite direction. Okay, move it up, checking my spacing each time. I'm going until I get basically in the center of the space as best I can. I'm looking to try and put this one as much in the center of the space as I can. Okay, so we're going to come to the bottom now over here, the lowest part of this circle. It may or may not be centered, but we'll try to get it as close as we can. And then when I line this up on the center, then hopefully this one will not be touching anything of the other circle when it goes around, because it's in that lowest part of it. So we'll just keep on moving and we'll go the opposite direction. Okay, and keep scooting down. Change each time. Try to remember to change directions if you want to. Okay, and this will probably be the last one. We'll just put this one in because we can. This is outside the boundary, so at this point it's good enough. We'll just kind of scoot down. All right, let's cut. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to show you is what I would do here is you could actually use your stitching line discs, but with these little things, unless your pen is extremely good fit on a stitching line disc, these may not touch. So what I recommend is going from this corner along the center line towards the middle and getting as many as you can. And if there is a gap where you know you cannot fit half of whatever in, then I recommend just fudging it a little bit, and I'll show you what I mean. So mine did not fit, right? This is the center of that space. It's close, right? But it's not a perfect fit. So if there's a little gap, I'm just going to put a little couple of straight lines, or from the center, you could just go to the middle and connect the dots as a little diamond, something like that. Just some little detail that looks intentional in the middle of those spaces. And you could even leave a bigger space. Like if you wanted a wide diamond, you could go like this and make the diamond lay down that way. So that's what I mean by we're having to fudge this. There's no perfect measure that I can know exactly how many can fit in there. I'm making a design that can fit and looks intentional. And that's the random rule for that section. All right, so I won't do that, but you'll be able to see that later when I finish this and put it up for everybody. Let's do the corner because we have just a little bit more time left. So we already mentioned that this part right here, these little rectangles are going to have this. Half of this will be replicated right out here. It fits perfectly in this space. So that is an important design element. We are repeating an element of the design, but we're changing it to fit the space a little bit. But having the repetition means that we're carrying that design through. And so if you can imagine, if this is the cutaway and you had another tile butted up to it, well then this circle would be this circle right where it connects. Instead of having half of a circle here, you'd have a full inside of this box in the little frame, which would look completely cool. All right, so let's go ahead and put something in here. This is the alignment right here of the 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, I'm just going to mark it a little bit more clearly because it's fading a little bit. Okay, that is the 1/4 inch. This is the line out here. So I'm just going to mark my 1/4 inch a little bit stronger. And what I want to do is actually extend this line all the way down to the diagonal because we're going to do a heart. And we're going to align the heart this way. A heart fits perfectly in this 45 degree like this. You know, this is a 90 degree and we're splitting it. So our heart's going to fit in there. I'm going to use the same size heart that we used before, and that's because it fits well, right? It takes up a lot of this space. It's a little bit of a bigger gap right here, but what I'm going to do is move it up. I'm going to move it up a 1/2 inch, and that way I know that this design is going to be completely in here without any cutaway. If this is the seam, I don't want it to be too tight. I want it to show as its own original design. Okay, so I'm making a random decision that the heart is going to carry itself, and it's going to go up a 1/2 inch so it'll fit better in here and it'll look complete without any potential for cutting it off. So this is Tile Titan number 4. And the hearts feature pretty big in it, but it's also a lot of straight line work as well, and the 1/2-inch pearls are part of the big design elements for this. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll sew this one as well. The 2 pieces that we need for the corner are the same size heart, and we're going to be using the smaller curly Q, which is the 8.5 from the set number 2 right there. So curly Q 8.5. So these are the 2 pieces for this corner section. Alrighty. So I'm going to put my needle right there. I'm going to flip this around so we can make sure it's going your way when we sew it. So the diagonal reference line, very important for this design. Go ahead and anchor your needle right in that spot right there. I've got my needle all the way down, and now I can put the heart on. Okay, align it right on this reference line right here and sewing it in. Let's kind of adjust the camera just a little bit. Hang on just a second, I gotta make some adjustments to my articulation so it'll do what I want. There we go. Is that okay for you guys? Not too bright, not blinding you, not washing out? Okay, so lining it up right here, we'll sew the heart. Oh, I guess I was moving a little bit fast. I can tell that I'm worried about the clock. That's what happens. All right, I'm going to actually change my stitch back to a little bit bigger because it's a little bit tight for this section. It was so small when we were doing those little sections over there. Rather than turn this all the way around, I'm just going to tip it a little bit. This way I can line up the heart and I can see the back of it. And that I think will also be more helpful because I will have a better handhold, right? Because the wider part of the heart will be accessible. Okay, so like right here, I still could hold on to it right there because of the regulator. I need to sometimes adjust the hand position in order to have it be able to hold on to the template and not have too much of this area get under the template. Okay. Yeah, it does kind of have a Valentine's look, but it's actually a takeoff of a tile that's in my bathroom, which I really thought was cool. I'll try to post a picture of the tile as well. So this is the same thing. Again, we are repeating a design element. And the reason I'm using this number 8 is this starts to crowd a little bit if I'm using the number 10.5. The 10.5 inch has a little bigger circle. So this space is a little bit daintier. Oh, of course, this is the one with the little narrow neck on there. I'm going to have to bring my foot up to get this under there. So I just get it right through there. And then I'm going to put my foot right back down. Try to get my needle right in the same spot so I don't have any bunky. Okay, I want this one to stretch a little bit and kind of fill into this space. So it's going to elongate a little bit more, but it's following the same rule. This part is touching the block boundary over here on the inside, and the tip, this part right here, is touching the block boundary right here. Okay? So when we do this, it's not going to cut into the heart. We're going to do our little curly Q right there, and we'll get that back part of it. Again, you're going to sew all the way around the circle, trying to get sort of right to the edge, maybe a little less because I don't want to close this too much. I'm going to turn it now so you can see how we line it back up. Tip this and align this part right here. And now as we sew back out, that's what's the purpose of us moving this up so that now it's going to not cut off our little detail right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and take this out. I have to lift the needle up for this particular one because the channel is a little bit narrow on this one. Can you see? It's not wide enough to slide the foot out. So I don't know. It's just one. It's got a mind of its own, I guess. Put that in there. Okay. Needle down. And now we'll do the same thing. I'll line it all the way out. It's touching on both positions here and here. And then I'll sew out, and we'll just put that last little bit of that detail in there. So with this one, I didn't come quite as far as I went around. I left a little tip of the template visible on this side. Okay, and let's see, we'll tip this just a little bit more. All right, so then again, we're just moving over to the other side. Just tip that like that. This is already lined up pretty much, and I can see on the 1/4 inch, it should basically be right inside that seam allowance right there. Pretty much perfect. And then let's tack it. Okay, and we'll cut that. I'm actually going to take the ruler off so I don't have to navigate through there. Get it right on the tip there, and we'll cut that. All right, so let me pull it up and we'll show you what it looks like. So that's the heart detail that's going to go on that section, right? And it's possible that if you wanted this to be bigger, you can use the bigger one. You can always push this down. So for example, if you only had one curly Q that was longer, but this was a little bigger, I think that that would probably still be fine. I guess for me, I felt like the length was perfect, but maybe I'd want a little bigger curve in there so that this would look a little bit more robust right here, but it's going to fit perfectly, and your seam allowance will come right along there, and they'll be pretty much right to that. So the seam allowance will let the heart float and then stitch right along it right there. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I think we've covered everything. Let me just look at the, I'll show you this corner section right here. So this is that last little part. We haven't sewn this, but you'd have the 3.5 inch circle, which should fit right in there at the half. So I would align it right there. You can make this come down further and then align your 3 inch circle right there. And from this position, the inner, not the seam allowance out here, this is the edge of the block, but this is the seam allowance. You would mark your crosshair with your mini crosshair, and you would put the little 2 inch crosshair, 2.5 inch crosshair, half of that right in here, such that it would be the same as this, right? But it would be half. And that way each of those little quadrants would be filled up, and you'll have your corner detail, and you'll have your pearls, and then you'll have this quadrant right here with the hearts. And then this would be like if you wanted to echo that, or you could echo it on the inside, or you could fill it on the inside. Remember that we're designing a lot of these to be template friendly. So having more intersections or echoes means that you can have more layers of color. So like this could be one color, then another color, then another color, that type of thing. And that's really just up to how much cutting you want to do and how much detail you want to put in. So want to remind you that next week is holiday and I'm going to have family in town. So I will not, no matter what the Sew Steady website says, I will not be on next week. And I probably will not be on for New Year's either. So I am doing the New Year's event with Donnell on Saturday, but not New Year's Day, which is Sunday, I believe. So I'll be on Saturday as part of that New Year's Eve event. So look for that. Make sure that you're checking for that, okay? Have a terrific, terrific day. Happy quilting and go play. Have a lot of fun. Enjoy. Take care, you guys. We'll see you next time.